Ryan, let's talk about spectacular looking movie that opens in theaters this Friday.
Yeah.
The Alpinist, which kind of sounds like a 70s spy movie, but it's not. It is about a climber. And yes, your brain will go immediately to Free Solo if you saw that spectacular documentary.
The subject of that documentary is also in this film.
He makes an appearance in here. This is another documentary about a Canadian climber named Marc-André Leclerc, who doesn't do rock climbing. He does rock climbing and snow climbing and ice climbing and all of the things that go into the technical art of alpine climbing.
Yes.
Think Everest.
So essentially, if you took all the craziest aspects of mountain climbing and all the dangerous aspects of mountain climbing and you spread them out, put them together and put them in one place, this is what he does.
Yes.
He does the regular stuff too. I mean, he doesn't have to be covered in snow, but he's known for his climbs that he does on, I guess, would be best described as unstable ground, without ropes, without
sometimes with ropes, but he climbs a lot by himself, which becomes an issue in this film.
The ropes tend to be on trial runs, trying to map out,
right,
sort of thing. But yes, yeah.
But he does a lot of his climbing solo. And actually, the problem with that in this film is that he has sponsors, and the guys, Peter Mortimer and Nick Rosen, who are the directors of this documentary, are trying to make a documentary about it. But he just goes and climbs and doesn't tell anybody.
Well, it's awesome.
He disappears.
But it's because he disappears and won't return their phone calls, and then they are on Instagram because these guys are or Facebook or where not. These guys are people who are climbers and who are in the scene, and they'll be like, "Wait a minute, is that Mark in the background? Did Mark just
climb he's not even on this continent."
Yeah, it's like, well, we know where he was as of 2 days ago, and that's actually this film is radically different from Free Solo in a lot of ways. I mean, it's similar. If you liked one, you'll probably like the other. But
yeah,
Free Solo was basically a man versus a mountain.
Yep.
The man isn't really. He's kind of just pacing himself. It's man versus himself, I guess, to a certain extent, because he's not looking for any acclaim. He almost doesn't. He wants to be acknowledged within the community.
But even then, it's secondary.
Yes, it's secondary to going and just doing these things.
They skirt around it a couple times. They're like, "What?" Because Alex Honnold, the guy from Free Solo, he even says, he goes, "I hate to say that Mark is, he's more attached to the spiritual side." He goes, "I hate to say that, but as you watch the film and listen to Mark talk and his girlfriend Brett talk about him climbing, it really is for him that you hate to say, people will say, oh, that's my church, and it almost is for him."
Yeah, I think, and I think the thing that what the movie does really well is kind of give us a reason why, and he's presented to us as kind of this goofy guy,
mm-hmm.
And then at some point, and I won't go into too much, but at some point, you actually realize he's brilliant. He is one of those people who is intellectually on a completely different plane, and the way that he has figured out how to exist in the world is climbing,
because he has issues existing in the world.
Yes, because of, I don't think it's entirely because of his intelligence, but it's at least partly because of his intelligence, and part of the way that he, sees life. And I don't think there's necessarily a suggestion that he's on the spectrum or anything like that.
Right.
But there's, he's, his mother is in the film.
He's a savant, and I do not mean an idiot savant.
No, exactly.
He is a savant when it comes to the mountain, because it's not like, Free Solo, everyone, man, Alex, he trains, he maps, he test runs, he does all this, he approaches his climbs in this way. Marc-André Leclerc, he sight climbs.
Well,
where like a lot of times where they're like, yeah, it's the hardest climb. You walk up to a mountain that you've never seen, and you start climbing it.
But there's also, and
that's not what he does all the time.
No. But I got to interview the directors and his girlfriend for this one, and he did sight climb,
right?
But he also was a genius when it came to tracking weather patterns, and just every other, just everything about him. The one thing that they kind of push forward in this film is most people don't attempt what he's doing until they're older, experienced climbers. It's because what it's not for an adrenaline rush. It's a completely opposite of that. It's
right.
It's a mellowing, it's a calming, it's a singular focus sort of thing for him. Mm-hmm. It's just to say he approaches it spiritually. I don't know that that's far off, but I think it's where he can kind of dim, the noise that's mm-hmm. around him. And focus, and so I think that's what is important to him about it. It isn't necessarily. Who doesn't want their accomplishments to be acknowledged? Everybody, no matter how humble you are, really would like right. at least among their peers to be respected. And I think he wants that and gets that. It's what makes him unusual is he doesn't care about sponsorships or this or that. The only thing he really cares about is the next climb.
Let's tell everyone he literally lives in a tent in the woods with his girlfriend, and not a big tent, a little throw it on your back tent.
But here's the thing: she is a world-renowned climber as well.
Yes.
And so it's this, it's the sort of thing where, they were, for all intents and purposes, the perfect match for each other. She talked about, they'd spend a lot of time climbing, and you would think, well, okay, does that give you a lot of time to, have an actual relationship? But for them being on the mountain together, that was more than enough. And she talked about how when you're free soloing, because you don't have ropes, you are right next to each other for most of that climb up, and it was that shared experience between them that made their relationship work. Mm-hmm. I don't know. This is a character study, like a deep character study. It's a puzzle. And it's a puzzle that goes unsolved to a certain extent.
Yep.
But that's kind of what's compelling about it. It just feels, I don't know. There's something magical about it. As someone who doesn't climb but knows people who climb, and never really understood the thrill of it. Free Solo gave you kind of one angle. Right. And then this gives you another, and this angle is actually more interesting.
It is, because it's not the Free Solo. You really got down in the weeds of the technical aspects of climbing, and in this film, everyone acknowledges the technical aspects of climbing, but it is secondary to how well he performs them, not how well he prepares them.
Yeah, and it's more you know, and where that Free Solo was about basically one mountain, one to climb.
Yep.
This is kind of more. I mean, it's an overtime collage of climbs. Some of the climbs we don't actually even see because
no, we just hear about him and then see
we hear
Instagram
about
photos.
Yeah, because that's how he is, and so I think what makes him a frustrating documentary character is also what makes him a fantastic
Documentary character. I know,
yeah.
right?
So I mean, it's you know, and I asked Brett, you know, what is there an aspect of him that it doesn't get, and she said, you know, and the one memory she pulled it, she said, well, here's, you know, this, you know, he would wake up in the morning. He wakes up in the morning and runs to the door, and if he can see the mountain from where, you know, if they've lived in a tent, sometimes they live, yeah, they're nomads, but if he can see the mountain, they're going to go climbing. Mm. And he's like a kid on, you know, Christmas, every morning going to look out the window, you know, can we see the mountain? Oh, we're climbing, you know. I mean, just his kind of passion for it is infectious because it feels so real. He's almost naive, you know. Yeah. Like there's almost this aspect. But
what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to death defy climb this. It's like a little kid going, we're going to the playground.
Yeah, and I think at one point, one point I think they asked him, hey, were you scared? No. You know, it was a really good day.
But he's not ignorant of the dangers either.
No,
he's
a
very weird climbing subject.
He is as aware of the dangers as his age allows him to be, if that makes sense.
And he's as confident in his abilities to climb as he should be, because it is demonstrated that he is actually he's talented.
Oh, yes.
So he doesn't play it safe, nor does he appear to take unwise risks.
Correct.
Now,
and I think that's well, and people will argue, well, you know, it's all a risk, isn't it, or whatever? But
yes, but then no one would ever climb.
You know, and he's for as reckless and as goofy as he originally comes off. You know, by the end, you realize that's, you know, in a way you judge him early on because you're like this crazy kid, you know, like he's doing these things and he just, you know, he doesn't get it. But the truth of the matter is he does get it.
And he probably gets it better than anyone else.
Yes.
It's the weirdest.
But that's what, again, that's why you know, he's a bizarre character, and a very likable bizarre character.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, so
you know what my one regret, in case anyone hasn't figured it out, we both like this movie.
Love this movie.
So go see it. It opens
beautifully
Friday.
Shot. Again, it's another one of those films where there are moments where you're like, oh no.
Well, and I said the cinematography alone on this film makes it worth seeing. I tweeted that out this morning after I was done watching it. But the only thing I don't like in this is the fact that so much of the climbing footage is actually shot with like GoPros or handhelds by his climbing friend. And it's like, man, this would be so awesome if it had been shot like Free Solo and like on IMAX, because some of his climbs would just be ridiculous.
I think here's part of, you know, the guys who do the film, they're climbers themselves. They're I think, and they do a lot of short climb videos and things, and
Right.
they're part of the community. And I think that, and I don't know if this is in general, I'm not overly familiar with a lot of their work, but at least in this case, they definitely, I mean, I think if they had gone IMAX, I think that Mark would have been like, no.
No, it would have been too limiting for him. I know. Again, so
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword. You know, it's like, yes, his climbs
Sure.
would have been spectacular, but they wouldn't have been his climbs.
Yeah, well, and he kind of, you know, I mean, that's, you know, when they finally, after he runs around the world for a while, they kind of, you know, they do have that moment where they talk to him, and he basically says, well, you know, if you're with me, I'm not, you know, doing it alone, or I'm not, you know, or whatever.
Right? Yeah, it's not really
Um,
me if it's me and you.
Yeah. So, you know, and I think so. I mean,
It's still fantastic to look at.
sure.
There's some
Whatever
awesome stuff.
restraints and constraints and obstacles that they had to overcome, and there were clearly a lot.
Yes.
But you know, it was funny because they, you know, I asked them at what point, you know, did they know that they wanted to make a movie about this guy, and the directors basically said, well, the instant we met him, it wasn't a question of did we want to make a film about this guy. It was, would he let us?
Right.
You know, and I don't think that question ever goes away throughout them making the film. I think, you know, throughout there's that sense of, I mean, this is like, you know, I'm not a bird watcher, but this is like seeing that a rare creature that you may never see again, and so you just appreciate the time that you get to spend with it. And I think that's kind of how I think, you know, they got to ultimately do what they set out to do with this film. But I think that there would have been a film here, even if it goes different directions. I just think that he's a fascinating character, and whatever path he took would have made for a fascinating documentary. And so,
Yeah.
Again, for all the frustration that they go through, it's like, but he's perfect.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't have made it. I mean, if he'd have decided, you know, as a kid that he didn't want to be a climber, he wanted to be a doctor. He would have been a ridiculous doctor.
Yeah.
You know, if he'd wanted to be a railroad engineer, he'd have been a ridiculously gifted and, you know, I mean, he's one of those people that, you know, they come, you know, in sports, it's, you know, he's a generational talent, you know, but he's one of those generational people that just, no matter what he would have decided to do as a child, he would have changed that
whatever it was
of the world.
Yes.
And that's what makes him a great character. We just get to see it in these beautiful mountainous areas
with really awkward interviews with him
awkward interviews with him.
It's just you're like, how is this guy? I mean, he yeah. So I think it also will change the way you look at a lot of. I mean, to me, it introduced the more intellectual aspects of the climb. Apparently, and these are things that, you know, I didn't learn necessarily from Free Solo. This taught me that, you know, the mathematical aspects of climbing are really appealing to people who are good with numbers. And I mean, it's to an extent, about being outdoors and enjoying the world, but it's also Brett described it as gymnastic puzzle, in the sense that you're trying to do things with your body that you don't necessarily know if your body can do.
Right.
But at the same time, you're also trying to climb a mountain that wasn't necessarily meant to be climbed.
Yeah, this isn't the climbing wall at the gym.
Yeah. So I mean, it's the intellectual challenge and the physical challenge combined that makes it enjoyable to them, and makes it addictive to them, and so that to me, that's I'm like, again, I loved Free Solo,
Yeah.
and if you haven't seen Free Solo, you should see Free Solo. Um, but this is almost like, oh, okay, now I get why you climb.
Yeah.
Because for me, it and maybe this is just kind of how I am. The accolades really wouldn't do it for me. Hey, you climbed the fastest, and okay, but the kind of finding yourself, and your comfortable, quiet place, as strange as that may seem, on the side of a mountain, that's something that I can get. I can get. Okay, now I can understand, living in a stairwell, if all I
Right.
wanted to do was go climb a mountain. Like, there's, it's that I get it more with this film than I did with
Free Solo. Oh,
with Free
absolutely.
Solo.
Absolutely. So that is The Alpinist,
Yes.
opening this Friday, September 10th, in theaters. I need to try to find time to go see it in theaters, because I really think I want to see it on a big screen.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, it's just, and it's just a good movie. Good movie.
It really is. I'm gonna have to see where it's playing. So that is it. We have got one or two movies coming out next week that we're gonna talk about off mic and determine what we're gonna talk about. And next weekend we will be at FanX in Salt Lake, comic convention, which we are
17 to 18, 19th. Is that what it is?
16, 17, 18, I believe.
Okay, well, there you go. Whatever
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
So we will be excited about that. We will be doing a panel called Orphan Heroes, where we talk about superhero movies that are kind of orphans in their respective worlds. So that will be fun. A lot of great guests. We hope to have a really good time. So watch our Twitter feed, VS Movie Podcast. You know the drill. I'll be reporting on that. But until we get back to you with more movies, stay safe, have fun, watch a good movie, The Alpinist being one of them. So until we get back to you, take it easy. I am Mark. That is Ryan. Bye, Ryan.
Nice to see you guys.
And we'll talk to everyone later.